Hi, my name is Jada and I'm going to be demonstrating a Think Aloud strategy for a second grade science lesson. We will be covering the water cycle. For this demonstration, I will be using a Think Aloud checklist, which includes predicting, questioning, visualizing, personal response, clarifying, summarizing, reflecting, and making connections to text-to-text, real world, to the text that we're reading. We would also begin with a few vocabulary words that are inside of it that we would go over as a classroom. To begin with the water cycle, I will begin with modeling how I think for the read aloud to my second grade students. Water everywhere. If you were an astronaut gazing down on Earth, the first thing you would notice is that most of Earth's surface is covered with water. Now that globe in our classroom, it is mostly covered in blue and only has a little bit of green, so that does make sense. A lot of the Earth is covered in water. In fact, water covers nearly 3/4 of our world's surface. 3/4. I'm not really sure what 3/4 means, so I'm gonna write that down. 3/4, and I'm gonna ask my teacher later about it. The next time you pour yourself a glass of water, watch carefully how the water moves. Water is a liquid. It can flow and take the shape of any objects that it holds. I remember learning previously about our liquids and gases and solids and how they're different and how they're the same to each other. But I know that when I drink water, it is a liquid because it takes the shape of the cup. Water can change. If it is cooled, it will freeze and turn into ice. I have ice at home in my freezer and it's really cold. And if I keep it out, then it starts melting. Ice is a solid. See, I remember reading about solids too. So we have our liquids and we have our solids. Ice can be made in a freezer, and I have one of those at home. And I've seen that the school has one too. Look at some ice cubes. Can they flow like water? Do they keep their own shape? Well, when I pour my ice into my cup of water, they do keep their own shape, but then they do slowly start to melt within my water. Most of the world's ice is found at the South Pole, Antarctica, and the North Pole, the Arctic. Those words, I remember hearing them, but I'm not sure. But I remember looking at the globe in our classroom, and the top of it had white snow, and the bottom had white snow, so I think that's what they're talking about. Some ice is also found at the top of high mountains where it is very cold. Well, I knew that when it's cold, it can snow outside, and I know that if it's hot, it's not going to snow. If ice is warmed, it will melt. So when it gets warmer, it will melt, just like we have it here in Texas. If water is warmed, it will change into water vapor. Now, where did I see the word water vapor before? Oh, on our list of vocabulary words that we put on the board. Water vapor, gas which water changed by heat. So when it gets hot, the water moves up and turns into water vapor, which is now a gas. So we learned about solids, liquids, and gases before, and now our water has turned into a gas. The gases will spread in all directions. In all directions, that means it's going to go everywhere around me. Interesting. You can see this happen when the water in a tea kettle boils. I'm not sure what an actual tea kettle is. I know we have a coffee pot, but I don't know if that's the same thing as a tea kettle. The steam spreads out, water vapor is all around the air. That's interesting. Disappearing water. Our journey around the water cycle starts in the open seas. Oh, I have never been to the seas before, but I've been to the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where we got to swim by the beach. As the sun shines on the sea, the heat, we talked about heat before, heat made it turn into water vapor. Heat turns some of the water into tiny drops of vapor. So now we have tiny drops of water. What is going to happen with those tiny drops of water? Where will they go? If they go everywhere, I don't understand. The water vapor rises into the sky. Oh, so we have our water down here and it's going to go up into the sky in water vapor. So we really don't see it because it's a gas. This process is called evaporation. That was a big word too, but I remember seeing it on our vocabulary list with water vapor. Evaporation, changing of liquid water to water vapor. Oh, so the process of the water vapor going up is called evaporation. But if all those water droplets are going up, I wonder where they go. Do they just keep going into the sky, into space? This part of the water cycle is very important. When seawater evaporates, all the salt that was in it gets left in the sea. This means that the fresh water, when it comes back to the earth, is clean. So there's salt in the water, which I know that because I've tasted it before, and it just tasted gross. You have to keep your mouth closed when you go swimming. So the water vapor comes up, but the salt is left down here, so the water is clean and fresh when it goes up. But I still don't understand what it goes into. Where does it go when it goes up? Evaporation does not just happen over the sea. It happens anywhere there is water and sunshine. So sunshine is a very important part. And I know that we talked about heat, and the sun puts off a lot of heat because when the sun is out, I always get really hot. So in sunny weather, rain puddles soon dry out. I've actually seen that before. When it would rain here in Texas, soon the sun would come out and then all our little raindrop puddles would be gone. Even ponds and lakes dry up a little because of evaporation. And I remember hearing about that every time the news says we have a drought. It says the lake levels are low and we can't go on our boat. Water also evaporates from plants and trees. So it evaporates from everywhere. So looking back, we have our water vapor that was in the water. Our water turned into water vapor through evaporation, and now it's going somewhere all over. We're not really sure where it's going yet, but it's going somewhere. So let's see if this helps us. As warm air carries water vapor upward, so now we're getting to it. I'm so excited because I really want to know where all this water vapor is going. The air cools down, so now it's getting kind of colder. It's not as hot as it was. The cold air cannot hold as much water vapor as warm air. So cold air only holds a little bit, but the warm air holds a lot. This change from water vapor to liquid water is called condensation. So now we have the water vapor and it's getting colder and colder, and it's called condensation. So now it's back to liquid. And I remember seeing condensation on our list, and it's changing of water vapor into liquid water. So we had water, then it evaporated into water vapor. Now it's condensating back into liquid again. But I wonder, how does it do that? You can see this happening when water vapor in the air condenses on a cold window pane. What does that mean? Sometimes when it's really cold outside in the winter, I look outside and it's kind of foggy. I wonder if that's what it means. The air condenses kind of like the fog. The air is full of tiny particles of dust. When condensation occurs, that was our vocabulary word, when it turned back into liquid. Millions of tiny drops of water form around the dust, making clouds. Oh, that helps me make complete sense because I was confused. So now I know that the water in the seas and in the oceans, they're going to evaporate into water vapor. And they're going to go up, up, up. Then they're going to start condensing in the clouds. And that's where they go. And I really didn't know that there was dust also in clouds that helped form the clouds. Looking at the sky on different days, you will see different patterns of clouds. These patterns come from three main types of clouds: cirrus, stratus, and cumulus. I think I kind of remember learning about different cloud shapes a couple weeks ago in class. Inside a cloud, water drops bump into each other and join together to make larger drops. So they bump. I wonder if I can visualize this. They bump into each other. So I have a tiny little drop and a tiny little drop, and then they bump into each other and they make a big drop. So I wonder what happens when they keep getting bigger and bigger inside the cloud. The larger drops grow too heavy for the cloud to hold, and they fall to the earth as rain, and it's called precipitation. That was also another word on our vocabulary list. It's water that falls down as rain. So now we have our water down here in our seas and our oceans. It turns into water vapor through evaporation. It condenses through condensation into a cloud, and then it falls as precipitation. That's very interesting. Then we have filling the rivers. When water has fallen as rain, snow, or hail, it continues its journey by running into the rivers. This is the next step along the water cycle. Water can find its way into the rivers in many different ways. So it shows us all the different ways it's going back to the ocean and the seas that we first began with. And it's going to start our water cycle all over again. So there are so many things we need to know about the water cycle that we need. We need sunlight. It forms into clouds. So we have the water down here. The sunlight evaporates the water into water vapor. Then it condenses into clouds with little dust particles. Then the water falls as rain or snow into precipitation. And then it runs back into the sea and starts all over again. So we have the water cycle. So also on the board, we would present our water cycle map that shows evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and how it's a big giant circle. And that is how you would do a think aloud for the water cycle second grade science lesson. Thank you.